The novel, The Haunting of Hill House, written by Shirley Jackson in 1959 and published by Viking Press, begins and ends much in the same way, with a variation on the following passage. No organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against the hills, holding darkness within. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone at Hill House, and whatever walked there, walked alone. Considered to be a modern Gothic tale, this novel offers a labyrinthine mansion, a malevolent ghost, a tragic female character, and a conflict surrounding science versus the supernatural. The Haunting of Hill House follows a cast of 4 main characters as they spend 2 weeks in what is fictionally established as being an authentically haunted house. Eleanor Lance, the protagonist of the tale, whom we chiefly follow through this story. Theodora, an eccentric psychic. Luke Sanderson, heir apparent. And Dr. Montague, who brought them all together to prove once and for all that the supernatural world actually exists. The story begins with Eleanor, a 30-something who has spent all her adult life caring for her invalid mother. After her mother's death, Eleanor goes to live at the home of her elder sister, her sister's husband, and their young daughter. It is here that she is contacted by Dr. Montague, who writes to her requesting her presence at the remote and mysterious Hill House. Having nowhere else to go, having nowhere to call her own, and having nothing remarkable ever happen to her, barring a supernatural incident where her childhood home was victim to an unexplained shower of stones, Lance jumps at the chance to get away. Taking a step, the journey is her first positive action. The first quarter of the novel is taken up with this trek. On the road, Eleanor reflects on her newly acquired freedom, thinking that she might take it in her head to stop anywhere and never leave again. Jackson writes, "She might never leave the road at all, but just hurry on until the wheels of the car were worn to nothing as she has come to the end of the world. Oleander hedgerow with a gate surrounding an empty space, or possibly a magical hidden world? A tiny cottage buried in a garden with a small blue front door and a white cat on the step?" Although she begins with this journey, and with all the freedoms that such an expedition entails, she ends up becoming a follower. First of Theodora, who remarks, "We could be sisters," and whom she clings to as they investigate the maze that is Hill House. And then Dr. Montague, who uses her and the others as a tool, a battery to awaken activity in Hill House. And finally, the spirits of Hill House itself, who, holding her hand, welcome her home. This place where Eleanor is expected and is being given shelter is described by Jackson as a vile and diseased thing, awake and watchful, rife with clashing disharmony. A claustrophobic place amidst rather than on top of cloying hills. Once entered, those who breach its iron gates will never be the same. Jackson weaves a truly eerie tale, using as a basis her creative imagination, her knowledge of the supernatural. The author in many interviews claimed to be a practicing witch, and figures from her own life. Although the location of Hill House is never definitively disclosed, it is based upon several real-life locations. These include Everett Mansion in Bennington, Vermont, a city where Jackson spent her final years, the Bugby Victorian Mansions on Nob Hill in San Francisco, designed by her grandfather in the city of her birth, and the Winchester Mystery House, a source of supernatural inspiration purportedly created by the spirit realm. When asked directly about her inspiration for Hill House, Jackson suggests that she conceives of it as an old house that has just been sitting there, nothing in it touched, nothing in it used by anyone anymore, just sitting here, thinking, watching every move you make. For Jackson, the evil that drives this narrative is, in fact, the house itself. For Jackson, the menace of the supernatural is that it attacks where modern minds are weakest, where we have abandoned our protective armor of superstition and have no substitute defense, which is why it is part of the Gothic and Romantic tradition, which also concerns itself with the age of reason, which, should it fall asleep, would produce monsters. The terror of this novel lies more in the breaking of boundaries between the rational and the supernatural, between the living and the dead, between the outside and the inside, and between sanity and insanity, than any fictional ghost that could be concocted. Jackson admits that she is writing about fear and guilt and the destruction of identity. Shirley Jackson herself was born on December 14, 1916, and raised in Burlingame, California. She moved to upstate New York as a teenager. While studying at Syracuse University, she met literary critic Stanley Hyman. As Hyman tells it, he read her short story Janice and told his friends that he was going to marry the girl who wrote that story, which he did. Hyman remains her literary critic and supporter when it came to her writing, if not always in their personal life. Jackson moved to Bennington, Vermont when Stanley got a post as a lecturer at Bennington College, a progressive all-girls institution, and it is this university town that becomes the basis for much of her literary fiction. Her writing explores themes of how the preservation of and insistence on a pattern is superimposed precariously on the chaos of human development, the rational order struggling inadequately to keep in check forces of great destruction, and an insistence on the uncontrolled, unobserved wickedness of human behavior. She wanted to draw back the darkness within the human psyche. Of her writing process, Jackson suggests, I find a wall surrounding some lovely forbidden secret, and in this wall is a gate that cannot be passed. Her process is to demand access and account the manner by which it is enacted. As suggested, Jackson used her life as inspiration for both her fiction and nonfiction work. It is this inspiration that populates the writer's landscape, Jackson asserts. As a writer, like a homemaker, creates his or her own world and stocks it with objects of beauty and fascination. So long as you write, nothing can ever really hurt you. On August 8, 1965, after caring for her husband, Jackson told her eldest daughter that she felt tired and went up to take her afternoon nap, as she normally did. She fell asleep and never woke up. The cause of death was determined to be of natural causes, one of the few instances where the natural took precedence over the supernatural in the life of this literary giant. She was only 49 years old. Among her many short stories, including her most famous, The Lottery, she wrote 6 novels and a popular series of nonfiction books on family life, among them Life Among the Savages. The Haunting of Hill House was her second to last book, and arguably the most popular, spurring 2 film adaptations and a television miniseries.